October is a beautiful month. With the weather getting better, the fall around the corner, it's indeed a time that people unwind and relax. And yet another reason to celebrate October, which is, in my personal opinion, there are two reasons to it. One is, it's a month of breast cancer awareness, as we all know. We deck ourselves in pink. But at the same time, there is yet another very important and crucial topic that celebrates the month of October, which is mental health awareness. October 10th, world celebrates this day. Celebrating the need for awareness of mental health. It is a beautiful concept. And this year also, as the podcast comes to you, we know that we've passed the date, October 10th, and we've announced that someone special is going to join us on this podcast, on this next guest, and that is clinical psychologist Dr. Anisha Abraham, who needs no introduction in Bahrain. She spoke to you all in person, and we are very happy at the 973 show to see the overwhelming response. We've got a handful of wonderful questions, which shows the sign of a healthy society. So in this podcast, we would be taking these questions through Dr. Anisha. Dr. Anisha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Raji. It's a pleasure to be here.
Isn't it a beautiful gesture to see so many questions in response to your one video, isn't it?
Absolutely, and this was in less than 24 hours, so I'm really thrilled about it.
As I said, I look at it as a very positive sign of how Bahrain is so aware on the need of discussing this on public platforms, because the topic itself comes with a stigma, but people know they're breaking that shell and it's coming out, and some wonderful questions. So in this podcast, let us take through those questions. But to begin with, Doctor, tell us about World Mental Health Day and this year's theme and anything in Bahrain that we're doing for this day.
World Mental Health Day is an international day. It was started by the World Federation for Mental Health in 1992. And it is a day that is dedicated towards creating awareness, educating people, and building advocacy for the cause of mental health. It's a day where the world over people come together to talk about mental health, although I do believe that it should not be restricted to one day. I think that we should be able to do these things.
I think that applies to every other day that we mark. It should be around the world, around the year.
And the theme for this year's World Mental Health Day is mental health is a universal human right. I think one of the things that we ignore is that those who have mental health conditions, they really are in a place where they face so many human right violations, and there are so many biases. There is such a lot of stigma, and people with mental health conditions don't have the right to vote in many countries. Sometimes they don't have access to good quality mental health services, no access to food, no shelter. And I think that this is a day when we build awareness and we bring attention to all of these issues, and so that's what we've been doing. And in Bahrain specifically, we've been looking at having community events. So there are a whole lot of workshops. If you look into some of the social media platforms, you'll see that there are a whole lot of events that are being planned. We had the Middle East Psychological Association, of which I'm a part. We did an event sometime about 2 weeks ago, and we're continuing to. Next week I have a workshop that's coming up as well. So, and I'm very sure that there are lots of psychologists on the island that are doing the same. So members of the community can please be part of these things and encourage and support this cause.
That's what in the beginning I said, Bahrain being such a small pearl and a drop here, still the vibrance in terms of this, not only the cultural aspect, especially in such situations, as you said, people join hands for a cause, and one is mental health, and as you said, the Middle East
Psychological Association.
I think they're very, very active with their own initiatives. And you work for Child and Family Foundation.
Yes, I do.
And I see you all very active on your social media.
Yes.
The way you promote these things are indeed impressive.
Which is what I was saying, because every day we have the opportunity to educate people. To let people know, so that if there's something that they're going through, that they are able to get help for it. They're able to recognize that it's not okay. It's not okay to be feeling not so good for long periods of time. And so when they realize that, they're able to then ask for help, and we normalize it. So
right. And that's you said like every gesture is different, or every need is different. Every person who has a mental struggle or going through this, these are different situations. And that's what manifests in all these questions that we received. So let's take them one by one.
Sure.
I would want to begin with this question. What is the definition of good mental health?
Okay.
Is it only where there is peace, or is it lack of wellness?
Okay.
Most often we relate mental health to peace. I think that's a thin line. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, doctor. What is the definition of mental
According to the World Health Organization, good mental health is when you feel good and you're able to function effectively in society. It's where you're able to use your talents, you're able to use your abilities and function productively, and be able to contribute to the community. And that's the definition of good mental health.
Right. Okay. And what are the symptoms of mental health issues, and how do we understand that we need help?
So this is something that's it's quite a vast topic, and there are many different kinds of conditions. But in general, and I'm going to probably talk a little bit about depression here, because that's something, depression and anxiety, these are conditions that are very, very common. And I'm sure at some point of time, we've all felt some of these feelings. So if you find that you've been down, and we all feel down from time to time, but if you feel like you've been down every day,
consistently for
a period of about 2 to 3 weeks, and you feel like you're not able to enjoy things that you previously liked doing, everything feels like a drag, feeling very exhausted, feeling fatigued, even on a day when you haven't done a lot, feeling very exhausted, not being able to concentrate, making a lot of errors in your work, being very forgetful, being also very snappy, getting mad at people, at the drop of a hat. What else? When your sleep is disturbed, when your appetite is disturbed, and these two can be either way. It's not just that you wouldn't be sleeping, you wouldn't be eating. The opposite can also be true.
You're sleeping for long hours, eating too much.
Eating too much, emotionally eating, trying to fill that emptiness or void inside you, having a lot of negative thoughts, feeling quite hopeless about the future, feeling very helpless, sometimes even having thoughts like, what's the point of living? Also having a lot of anxiety. When you notice that these things are happening, and in isolation, like I said, these things are things that we probably all felt at some point or the other. But when many of these things are present, these symptoms that I talked about are present, and they've been there for about 2 to 3 weeks at a stretch, then you know that it's time to not just kind of let it be, to not just, ignore it. And so when you see that you have all of those symptoms for a long period of time, then it becomes important that you at least speak with somebody. It may or may not be something, but it's always recommended that you actually speak about help. This and seek help.
It's a very valid point which you just put across, doctor, because most of the time, at least in the society that we belong to, we tend to ignore this as anxious. It happens. It's it's the age factor. It is a time factor. But it's good that people are getting educated that they should not ignore anxiety and depression, because these could be conditions.
Yes.
And yes, those who are watching us, you have help out there, and you can reach out to people who are qualified. And one such is Dr. Anisha Abraham, who is a clinical psychologist in Bahrain. She's easily accessible through her social media platforms, or even our social media platform, the 973 Show, and the Child and Family Foundation Center social media platform. Doctor, we'll go to another question. What do I do if I'm worried about my mental health? Of course, you touched upon the point a little bit, but then I would add to that question. What is that situation where I really should be worried about my mental health?
I think when you find that functioning starts to get affected, I think that's a place where, you really need to immediately come and seek professional help. But otherwise, if you just notice some of these symptoms, I'd always say talk to somebody that you trust. Open up, share it with somebody. It could be a family member, it could be a friend or a GP. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mental health professional.
It's about opening and sharing and venting it out.
Sharing it with somebody, and try and see how you can cope on your own. Now, for example, making sure that getting in some amount of movement and exercise, that's something that can be helpful for mood. It's something that can help us with our sleep. So to try and put that into place. finding somebody who can be supportive to you and talking a little bit with that person, writing a little bit about what's going on with you, putting it down, that is something that can be an initial thing. A couple of things like this that you can try and do on your own, and then see how it goes. If you feel like things are getting better, then that's okay. But if you feel like despite these things, you're spiraling and it's not really, changing so much, then I think it's important that you do seek help. There are lots of places here. There is the Salmania Psychiatric Hospital, which is like a government facility, which is accessible to all of us actually, and also lots of private practitioners. There are lots of psychiatrists, there are lots of psychologists, family therapists that are practicing here on the island, and I think that we should try and look out for which one is suitable for us, and and then go ahead and seek help.
Great. Okay, doctor, yet another question when it comes to medication. So you just said like reaching out to a professional is one way of medication, but the specific question is how does medication help? Are there alternatives to taking pills?
Okay, so broadly speaking, yes, medications can help, and not all medications are the same. In mental health, sometimes people kind of brand everything as bad, and it's not, it messes with your mind, and people have a lot of fear about taking medications. We don't think twice when we have to take an antibiotic, but when it's an antidepressant, everybody's like little scared, and it's understandable because if you've never taken it before, you have no idea what that's going to make you feel like, and so it's understandable. Basically, what medications do is that they alter. We all have certain neurotransmitters or chemicals in our brain, and the medications adjust the levels of those for us. So you may have heard of some common neurotransmitters like serotonin or dopamine or GABA, and these are common these are common neurotransmitters, and the medications just help in regulating these neurotransmitters in the brain. And so when you take them, you'll notice that your symptoms are getting better. Some things, remember that medication is not a full cure, okay, but in certain conditions it is very important that you take medications, especially if a person is having conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. In these conditions, it's very important that you must be on medications. These are not conditions that can be treated using just therapy. Medications play a very vital role in these conditions. And then there are also other conditions like depression, anxiety, where a combination of medications and therapy could actually give you the best results. All right, and these are things that that people may be concerned about. People may be worried about side effects and things like that. Then you must talk to your doctor about it, and they will be able to explain everything to you. Sometimes it takes a while before you're able to arrive at the right combination for you. But you must always do these things under the supervision of your psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. The question specifically is there alternative to taking pills?
Yeah, certainly.
But as you said, it varies, right?
There is no simplistic answer to this to say.
It depends on the situation, the stage
it depends
where
on the risk that's involved. Now, for example, if there's a depressed person who's acutely suicidal, then it becomes very important not just to kind of take medications, but also to be hospitalized. If the suicide risk is very high and if it's imminent, then you need to be hospitalized as well. So there isn't a very clear answer. But also, see, now what happens is that in a lot of cases, people are not comfortable with the idea of taking medications.
Maybe that's why the question stems from there. As you rightly said in the beginning, there is the stigma of taking medicines for mental health.
Right.
What is the repercussion that it can have on it?
Right. A lot of it is just not knowing, just the fear of
it's
not
ignorance,
knowing. Just the ignorance or just anxiety about doing something that we've never done before, and so your doctor will be able to educate you and help you and see you through whatever.
That's why we have professionals around us, and let's not take any risk and let's not go to Google, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's not take.
We all look at Google and diagnose ourselves. No?
Let's not diagnose ourselves, because the best person to advise you in any situation which you think is affecting you, your functioning. That's exactly what Dr. Anisha said, the word functioning. If it's affecting you, your functioning level, then you really need to seek professional help. Doctor, let me move to this next question. I'll club the next two questions. There are two questions of the same line. How can mental health struggles affect a person physically? And does it affect appetite and weight?
Yeah. I think the mind and the body are connected to each other. and definitely our mental health can impact our physical health. Yeah. Now, one of the first things that start to get affected when we are going through stressful situations is our sleep. So you'll notice that again, like
sleep pattern is disturbed,
your sleep pattern gets disturbed. There's also quite a large body of evidence that suggests that those who are going through mental health issues also tend to be at slightly higher risk for other conditions like, elevated heart rate and, hypertension, gastrointestinal conditions. When we are anxious, one of the first places we feel it is in our tummy. Right? And wanting to use the washroom.
Everything, even the other way, the excitement also. The butterflies in the stomach.
Exactly. The other thing is that when we're going through something emotionally or when you're having a mental health condition, it can really affect our motivation and our ability to make good choices for our health. There are times that you feel like, no, I need to take my diabetes medication, but I don't feel like it, so I won't take it. I won't take my vitamins. I won't go out for a walk. I just don't feel like up to it, and skipping meals or eating too much and all of these things. So definitely there's a link between the two. And also when you talked about weight gain, for the same reason, right? There is definitely like a link between mental health conditions and weight gain, because sometimes what happens also is that when you have elevated for a prolonged period of time, when you have high cortisol levels, which is what is released when you're going through stress for a long time, it leads to metabolic issues and insulin resistance and some of these issues. So because of that, it becomes important also to take care of the mental health issue, because they're both very closely linked to each other.
Right. Okay, and I think this is one of the best questions that I liked. I would call it the star question. Do you think modern society increases the likelihood of mental health problems? Modern society is a big word, isn't it? The way the society has changed, the demands. Earlier in the day, we used to talk about peer pressure. But now I think it's not limited to that. The modern society has evolved so much.
Yes.
Do you think that can affect or increasingly affect mental health?
Absolutely. I thought it was a great question too. According to the World Health Organization, in the last decade, there's been a 15% increase, in mental health disorders. Now, one reason for that is because of the education awareness. People are able to pick it up sooner. They're able to go and get help, and therefore they're getting diagnosed more. So that's one part of it.
That would be one.
But the other thing is the evolving technology and the role that social media plays in our lives. And everything that comes with. There's a good side to it, but there's also a dark side to it. The obsession with likes, and the need for external validation. The constant buzzing of our phones, notifications, the fear of missing out, the comparison. When you look at social media, the other person always looks like they're having a great life, and then, and we're not affected by it so much if you're in an okay place yourself, but especially when you're going through something that's difficult, it's very easy to look at these things. It's true that we all know that it may not be what it appears to be, and yet we can be quite impacted by these things, which can really, really affect our moods, our how we evaluate our own life and our own achievements, and we can always feel like we're falling behind, and other people are ahead of us, and all of these things, and can create an immense amount of stress and pressure. Another thing that could have contributed in the recent times to the increase of mental health issues is COVID itself. So I think that's also, an important thing, that lots of people went through lots of difficult situations during the couple of years that we had to deal with COVID. And I think the aftermath is still on. We're still seeing it with families, families that have lost loved ones, and, we were seeing it with children, and, there are the lingering effects of COVID as well. And the other thing also is that I think societies broadly are becoming increasingly individualistic. I think independence tends to be overrated. I think we all need each other, and interdependence is a more realistic goal. So the more we kind of move towards a very highly individualistic society, there's also a lot of loneliness that people are dealing with. and not having support systems and very
they're
often
really vanishing.
people want to just block that out, and so what do? You binge watch like some shows on Netflix, and not being that there's so much of noise around us that we fail to actually connect with ourselves. And all of these factors that are related to the modern times and technology, all of these things I believe are negatively impacting our mental health.
Right. I think the question was deep and the answer was deeper. Very thought-provoking phrases from you, Doctor. It's gone are those days when we limit these situations to youngsters. We are moving into a society where even adults, elderly, they're all going into that lonely, dark hole out there while we are engaged in our favorite series or shows. Correct. But still, as you rightly said, we're not connecting with those around us. That can really create a sense of void.
Yes.
And when the whole world is progressing in terms of the technology or whatever ways, I think we shouldn't be failing, right? Yes. We should rise ourselves up, raise the bar of how to connect with each other and make the best use of these platforms that are available out there. Moving to a very important category, children. That's again a beautiful question. How does one manage their own mental health around children, knowing that children are innocent and unaware of the impact? I would also want to club this with a question on mental health in children as well. This question specifically is like, when we have a mental condition, how does this affect the children around us, the innocent ones? At the same time, what about the situation with children? Even children can go through depression and anxiety, isn't it? Their own world.
Absolutely. So, navigating parenting with a mental illness is not easy, because when you're barely able to care for yourself, it's very hard to also be like that for somebody else. And the child that's innocent and is looking at you to take care of them and be there for them and listen to them and play with them, and how they are, they constantly have something to say, they constantly have something to talk about, and it's difficult. And I think this is where families and spouses and all play a very important role. I think a couple of things that you can do. One is to try your best to stick to a routine as much as possible, and so to make sure that meals are cooked on time, to make sure that routines are followed, that the kids are showered. So we'll need to rely on other people if it's becoming too difficult, at least, but because that structure is very important. It's very important that for a child the day is predictable, and so even if you're going through something difficult, the child's life and routine should not be disturbed to the maximum extent possible. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is, even if it's not possible to kind of be yourself and be with the child all the time and do everything like you normally would after or before the condition, I think even to have small moments of connection. So even if it's for 15 minutes a day, where you can sit down with the child, you can put away all distractions, other chores or other forms of distraction, be with the child, connect with the child, spend one-on-one time with the child. I think that can be extremely powerful if done consistently, right? The other thing also is to be aware of, yourself. Like sometimes we can be very snappy, very irritable. Sometimes we all do. I think there's no way in which anybody can be a perfect parent. We all snap, we all get angry,
we shout.
To kind of come back, to apologize to the child, to say that, okay, mama made a mistake, I should not have yelled at you, I'm sorry about it. Okay, can we do something now? And to be able to repair after these lapses on our part is also very important. And I think that especially if somebody in the family is going through something like this, it becomes even more important for other family members, even friends, for example. We need to allow our friends. Very often we suffer in silence, we struggle in silence, we don't want to tell the other person. There could be somebody else that's close to you and they don't know what you're going through. You haven't actually opened up. They may be actually more than willing to come and help you. We have neighbors, we have friends, but that can only happen when we allow them in. And so we need to be able to accept this help that people are willing to provide us, connect with people and not self-isolate, so that we're also able to take care of our children and minimize the impact or for whatever we are going through on our
them,
children. Yeah. And the second part of your question, which is about children, for sure, I think that, children might not always come and tell you that I'm feeling very sad all the time and I have no interest, but you might notice that there may be an increase in disruptive behaviors, doing like a lot of naughty things, lying, shutting down completely.
Both extremes,
Yeah, both extremes. Sometimes complaining of aches and pains, not wanting to do schoolwork, not wanting to go to school. Some of these things. So when you notice these things, again, if it's happening for a period of time, then I think that definitely even for children, and we have a lot of child psychologists on the island as well.
Yeah.
Dr. Mariam Alamadi, who owns the Child Foundation Center, is a child psychologist herself. So she specializes in that. She sees adults as well. But, so there are lots of people who specialize in working with children, and I think that, we must go ahead and, get our kids some help if we feel like they're struggling.
Right. Before we conclude, there's one last question. How do we help family and friends who passive-aggressively affect themselves and loved ones intentionally because they refuse to accept that they need to be talked to, given comfort and love instead? It's a very focused and pointed question, which I think, again, is a common problem that we see, isn't it?
Yes. I know this is something that we see a lot. This is typically the kind, sometimes it's not even about a parent having a diagnosis, but even the dynamic between two people and how that also can impact a child. It's a difficult situation to be in, especially when you want to help somebody and they're not ready to accept that help that you're trying to give them. And especially when somebody is being passive aggressive, it's very difficult to be compassionate. Be quick to say, but you did this, and this is not okay, and this is not acceptable, and things like that. But we need to go like a level deeper and see what's behind some of that. It's likely that there's bitterness, there's disappointment, there's some kind of resentment, something that they're holding on to, some kind of past hurt. There could be something. Also, a lot of people have grown up in homes where they were never encouraged to share emotions. And so rather than actually talking it out and saying that, listen, you did this, and this upset me, which is why, I'm feeling like this. And, they're not able to talk out these things. So they hold on to it. They keep that, they bottle it up within them. And then they're not able to resolve conflict, and that can lead to a lot of these passive-aggressive behaviors that we were talking about. I think trying to approach a person in a very non-judgmental way, being calm, knowing that this person is sort of on edge and angry, and trying very consciously to be very calm around that person, trying to talk, trying to offer whatever support that you can. That's one thing. If they start to become aggressive or rude or say something sarcastic, for example, I think that we need to then also be able to say that when you speak like this is how I feel. So we let them know about the impact of what they're doing at that point, and then try and de-escalate. And also remember that everybody has a journey of their own. Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom before people realize that they need help. And as much as we as family and friends want to help them, and we want to advise them, we want to get them to seek help and do something about whatever they're going through, sometimes it's their own journey. And sometimes in time people will realize, perhaps when it starts to impact other areas of their lives, maybe when it starts to impact their work or some other aspect or their health, that's when people will get up and realize that, okay, this is something that I can't just sort of, sweep under the rug. It's something that I need to address, whatever is going on emotionally.
Right. Well, thank you all who reached out to us with those wonderful 8 to 9 questions. I would call it a beautiful mix, right, Doctor?
Yes.
Which took us through almost all the realms of mental health and how it can be assisted. And thank you, Doctor, for joining us and taking us through many things that you said today set my thoughts rolling. And I'm sure those who hear us also would give a thought into it and reach out to the right kind of help, the professional help. And the last point which you said about being understanding, being calm, at times it's not practically possible.
Not easy.
But then let's give that benefit to the other person who's at the edge and take ourselves to be doing that balancing act. And again, it's just not the month of October nor October 10th, but it has to be around the year. We all have to be caring for the society around us so that we help each other to move forward, because mental health is the foundation for a better living. And to conclude, how can we achieve good health, Doctor? Good mental health, Doctor?
Okay. I'm going to share like 5 things that we can all try and do in order to have good mental health. One is to be engaged in some kind of meaningful activity, something that gives you a sense of purpose. For some people, this thing can come from their work. For some people, it can come from their hobbies or their passion. For some people, it can come from volunteering. But find one thing that is meaningful,
motivating,
something. The second thing is to have a goal and have something to look forward to. When you have something to look forward to, it gives you the drive to get up, to try, to push, and it gives you a sense of hope.
Purpose.
The third thing is to take care of your physical health, because that plays a very important role. So to make sure that, we're eating right, that we're moving, and, there's movement, there's physical activity, to make sure that we're sleeping well, to make sure that we're taking care of any medical conditions that we have, not just ignoring them. Taking care of ourselves is very, very important for good mental health. The fourth thing is social connection. I think that, that is something that is so integral. We need to have friends, we need to have family, we need to have a sense of community. We need to be there for people and they will be there for us. And it's this give and take that gets us through life. And social connection is very important. And the fifth and the last thing that I will say is about being in the present. It's a concept called mindfulness that actually is rooted in Buddhism. And it's about being in the here and now. Very often you'll notice that much of our distress and our difficult times come from either being in the past or being in the future. So we're either feeling sad about something that already happened, or
something we're worried about
something that's going to happen in the future. What will happen? I think coming back and focusing on the moment, to be in the present, is an extremely powerful tool that we can do to have good mental health.
Great. So it's having a goal, being motivated towards something, keeping a physical well-being, social connections, and mindfulness.
Yes.
Great. So thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us and for taking us through all these questions plus these final tips. I know there are people out there who would have more questions, more specific, more personal questions. You can always reach out to Dr. Anisha Abraham, who is a clinical psychologist with the Child and Family Foundation Center in Bahrain. You can reach out to her on their social media handles or the 973. We can always connect you to Dr. Anisha. If you wish, you can even share your questions again. We would keep a track of this account, and then Dr. Anisha would personally get back to you on all your concerns and worries. Let's together stay connected. Thank you once again, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Raji. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today.
So let's wait for our next exciting, engaging and interesting guest on the next guest.